I thought it was funny. Halloweeny. All right, I've just realized I just said the word Halloweeny in no context, so that's going to be funny on YouTube. Hey guys, how's it going? John, it's been a while. How are you doing?
I'm doing good stuff. How about yourself?
I'm okay, thanks. I have a little bit of the last bits of a cold, so if I go on mute and cough, I apologize. But Jersey, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Jersey. This is kind of a special show, right? I mean, it's fun to bring folks on that we're get a chance to work with on a regular basis, and kind of bring that like customer perspective over to the show.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited. And also, Jersey, random. Have you got a bluey mug that you've been drinking out of?
Absolutely. So Bluey is my mentor for being a better parent. So I highly recommend the show to any adults, but kids like it too, but it's great for adults mostly.
Yes, I got wrapped into watching it when my niece was visiting. Shout out to Erie, my niece. And she was watching it, and it was the Parcel episode. And we watched it like 3 times, and the first time I did not understand. And by the second time I was like, wow, this is better than Peppa Pig. Like, actual disrespect to Peppa Pig, because she's a B word. I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think parents go through like a transition period too, where it's a little tough when your kid stops enjoying Bluey as much as you do. And I still loved the show, and we wanted to keep watching it. And he was like kind of moving on to the next one. But yeah, it's tough.
Season 3 just hit the US Disney app, so highly recommend it. Part 1, Part 2 coming soon.
Oh yeah.
We are not sponsored by Disney, but no joke. All right, let's get into the show. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I'm a senior commercial architect at AWS in the Optics team. John?
Yeah, and John Massey work alongside Steph in the Optics team. And today we're joined by Jersey Jervinsky. Did I get it right there, Jersey?
Perfect.
No. Okay, good. Yeah, GM of FinOps at Capital One, and just really excited to kind of have Jersey share some insights into the FinOps practice at Capital One, kind of being a special customer, and I'll kind of pass it over to you, Jersey, to give a little bit of background.
Yeah. My little origin story is, in the first year, I really didn't do much. I didn't say much. I hit my first birthday, and that's when I really hit my stride. Fast forwarding a little bit, I've been at Capital One for 14 years. I've played many different roles in the tech organization, and I think that's what really has set me up for this role that I've really enjoyed. I've worked in the data center days as a solutions architect. I've worked in as we shifted towards cloud and AWS adoption of migrating workloads out of mainframes and building them in new microservice architecture, cloud native, and just having the experience of the pain of getting things done in the data center days, and then working through the full stack app teams and everything that we ask of our app teams and everything that they own and everything they need to do to be successful. There's just a real appreciation I've gained for how hard it is to build something, own something, keep iterating on it, and then do all the things we ask teams to do, such as being cost efficient. So after spending that time, in the last 2 years, I've been focusing on enabling solutions and practices at Capital One to be as efficient as we can be in the cloud.
Yeah, that like kind of like understanding of the physical mechanics and like the data center portion, like kind of behind like all this IT stuff. It's a different a little bit of a different perspective. We were talking to somebody else about this at one point, where talking about like the orchestration of like tens of petabytes of storage in the data center world. You literally think about all these like physical dimensions of that. And then if you're doing that in the cloud world, you I think have a little bit of a different appreciation for not having to like physically rack and stack or like do this other stuff or like different processes. So it's it just brings a different perspective to all of it.
Yeah, definitely. And so thank you for joining. I'm excited to get into some customer stuff, especially at such a large scale. And so as always, feel free to drop in questions, comments in the chat. We'll we'll try our best to answer them, maybe pass them on to Jersey. And if you are watching us on YouTube, then feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And any general questions, if you want to get in contact, cost optimization, amazon.com. We're getting a lot of emails about questions about stuff I've talked about on the show recently, which love answering. They come straight to my inbox, so we'll always pick them up and reply to you, and at least try and give you a hand. But yeah, John, do you want to kick us off with this chat with Jersey?
Yeah, so Jersey, I guess maybe a good place to start is like the Capital One adoption story on AWS. Like, what was sort of the time frame for that? Like anything that you can kind of share, set a little bit of context on that side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Capital One made the decision in 2015-16 to go all in on the cloud. And as that strategy was set, we very quickly pivoted and put all focus on getting to the cloud as quickly as possible, as stable as possible, and as different teams took different approaches. Some lifted and shifted, some completely re-architected. The handful of years up through 2020 was really focused on getting to the cloud as quickly as possible. 2020, we closed our last data centers, so now we're fully on, and now entering 2023, we really want to call ourselves best in class of being in the cloud. Learning all the things we have over the last several years. Some of us are on like our fourth iteration of architecture changes on applications as we continuously learn the best way of doing things in the cloud.
And so I guess like the cost piece, like along with that journey, how did that sort of evolve alongside like the technical aspect of it?
No, absolutely. So when we started, governance was always important to us from day one. Before we moved any workload, there was a lot of thought put into just governance in general, not necessarily cost, but as a top priority. But it sits on the shoulders of the things that were put in place, such as a very strong tagging strategy from day one. And really, that's the number one thing I would recommend anyone to do is having visibility into your workloads, what's generating the spend, and just making it very tied back to your org structure is critical, is the foundation. And then everything else builds on top of that. So that's where we started. In the early years, it was focused on let's get to the cloud quickly. Similar to a startup, we're growing, like move quickly. And as we gotten bigger and we got workloads over, we started looking on RIs pretty early on. We did that centrally, so we took the burden off teams. Then we started visualizing what their people's spend was, so they could just see the growth. And then, as we really got into it, we started building our own tools to recommend optimizations, right sizing, where potentially we could even automate some shutting off non-prod environments at night. And in the last few years, it's been a full court press where we really are trying to make cost optimization and really cost efficiency just part of what teams think about. Building a new app or re-architecting an existing app or just thinking about a new feature, we really want teams to be just thinking about best design in the most efficient way to get the job done.
In Jersey, so you mentioned like kind of governance, more broadly than just cost, and kind of that's something that's maturing alongside cloud adoption as a whole. I'm curious if there's anything from other governance areas that you brought over to the cost governance side. I'm just curious in your perspective there.
Yeah, we leverage a cloud custodian. That's an open source tool. We do several things with it, but from a cost perspective, it really helps us understand the state of different resources, and especially in non-prod, we have certain policies that we actually will shut things down if it doesn't meet a certain rule set that we write. So that's been a nice way of really automating and taking the burden off teams in the non-prod environment to be able to take those actions. And it also really helps feed our tools around things we see in prod, and then enabling that visibility to the app teams to make certain decisions, since we don't want to be in the business of centrally doing things on behalf of others in their prod environments.
So do you think it's fair to say that cost governance shouldn't be reinventing the wheel, that there might be other governance kind of pieces within the organization that maybe have valuable lessons or things that can be borrowed from, that come into the cost governance space?
To me, cost efficiency is nothing more than cloud best practices. So, many organizations are thinking about how to engineer something in the best way. What are the different architectural principles that we should be following? What's the new services that AWS just launched? They just had 15 announcements since we started this podcast. And really, let's not think about cost in silo. Let's integrate that conversation into just broader cloud strategy of where do you want to go over the next 1 year, 5 years, from an architecture standpoint.
Can I jump in as well? Going back, can I just ask, what is cloud custodian? I feel like I heard about it years ago, and then I think I went to a meeting with Capital One back when I was at KPMG, and we all talked about FinOps stuff, and that was a thing that they were just talking about. And so I realized I've heard it thrown around a lot, but many people who are probably watching don't know what it is. Could you just give a brief summary, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's an open source tool, so you can go check it out. It really it's marketed in a way of it's able to crawl your ecosystem, and you're able to write policies against it. It's similar maybe to AWS config, where you can it can get insights around what your resource is doing, maybe how it's configured, and then you can also write policies either to notify someone of, hey, this is not meeting a certain policy we wrote. Or you can take an actual action, so it gives you flexibility to write the policies that fit your needs against what the state of the resource is in your account.
That's really cool. I like the idea of kind of letting people know that things aren't like the customization of your own policies is great, and then the idea that you can just be like, oh, by the way, this is not right. Can you go fix it? Or even prevent people from doing stuff by kind of stopping them in the first place. No, it's cool. So check out Cloud Custodian. I think I need to do some checking out of it.
Well, and I think that's cool too, because you're talking about like best practices, like, okay, how do you make that programmatic? And then maybe that helps you, kind of break down the problem, a little bit differently than thinking about it, more broad. But that kind of brought me to another area I was curious about too, Jersey, is, like a mix of technical versus finance for like the cloud FinOps world. What do you think is like a good balance sort of between those two skill sets?
You got to have the full spectrum. The thing that I've really appreciated, that this is not a one person, one team show. I am practically best friends with our central finance team. David Cahan, who leads that organization, has just done phenomenal work. If you chatted with him, you wouldn't know if he's an engineer or a financial background individual, and he just does those things so well. Additionally, the partnership with architecture, distinguished engineers, we have principal engineers, I believe, in AWS across the organization. They help really pull information together. So my team has a spectrum of engineers that build tools to platform engineers that really are able to understand architectural practices. Some with more analytics and data engineering background, and then the next layer of partners are finance, architecture, and other external parties across the organization. And together you mix it all, and you come to great conversations, which could be like, you're doing this engineering thing, maybe not ideally, and it's costing us a lot of money, and bring finance and engineering together, and you're able to kind of make a decision that makes most sense.
Yeah, the definitely get that mix is hard to do when you're starting out, but it's if you can. I always think if people, when they're trying to build a FinOps team, try and find, if you're trying to hire someone, like someone actually the other day, a customer of mine was asking us to look at their job roles and see if we could help kind of make sure they were going to hire the right person. And one thing I wanted to know was, what's your goal? Like if it's about creating automated solutions, then you need to hire a developer. Whereas if you're worried about procurement and finance concerns within the business, that's what you need to hire. But John, just throwing the question back to you, like when you talk to customers and they're trying to start out their FinOps team, where do you kind of angle their starting position on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some folks are looking at it maybe two different ways, right? They're like, oh, do I need to hire people to do this certain task? And that can be hard, right? Because then you're kind of, I think, more in decision-making mode. But to Jersey's point, if you need this blend of folks, maybe those folks are already there at the customer. And if you don't have a technical resource dedicated to FinOps, can you pick, a stakeholder from, specific workloads that can kind of fill that role, like as like a part-time type thing, or just kind of be responsible for it. So I guess like if you can't find those folks to be dedicated to it, are there resources like internal that you can kind of pull through that they can help fill the gap and make sure you have the technical skill set or the finance skill set if it's something that's not dedicated.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was last week on the episode we were chatting about this as well. And the people that care about this stuff will come forward and they'll take action. So if you are starting out in your business and if you're interested in FinOps, CFM, and just kind of call out and talk to other people, and if they're interested, they'll come and support you. And those people exist, and so kind of entice them in to kind of help kind of get things going if you're looking into it. And guys, for those who've joined, we're talking to Jersey from Capital One. Feel free to ask any questions, comments in the chat, and email us after if you have any questions. But we've got a question I wanted to throw in. So how do you balance engineering work with cost efficiency? So leading off your team, how do you manage to make sure that everything is kind of weighing up those scales together?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Kind of the intro I had is like, well, teams do so much. They build the features. They if they break, they need to fix the platform. They need to be resilient. They need to be secure. They need to continuously innovate. Oh, and you need to be efficient as well. I do it with cupcakes. I send people cupcakes and they do things. So I think that is probably the best way to go about it. Now, on a serious note, outside of cupcakes, which I really do, it's balancing around what can you do centrally. So my organization focuses on what can we automate centrally, build into platforms that everyone leverages. So not everyone has to solve the same problem, and they just benefit from it. And then where can we get as close as possible to the point of automation, but providing an ability for someone to have an input. So for example, we do a lot of pushes of pull requests to teams to say, we think you should do this, but customize it more specifically to your requirements to make sure we're incorporating that kind of before you push it into production. And that way you're making it super as lightweight as possible for a team to say, I see what you're trying to do. I understand my application. Let me configure this variable and then push it to production through my test suites just to make sure that everything checks out. And then, there's a large part of things that just teams have to do locally because it's just dependent on the application, on the architecture. So we really try to educate. We try to make our tools as easy and patterns as easy to understand for when to use it. And it's a long investment. Meaning there's going to be some short-term wins, but we're trying to get people thinking about, hey, when you re-architect your app in a year or two, because you're going to do that anyway, what patterns would you like, we would like them to leverage? So as we continue to do these short-term, mid-term, and long-term investments of education and insights and tooling enablement, teams will naturally do the right things. No one wants to go, I don't care about costs. EC2, deploy. It's just around balancing all the things we're asking them to do. And is it the right time for them to do that action today? Or maybe is it in a week or maybe in 6 months? But at the end of the day, if they're now thinking about it as part of PI planning, as part of a new design of a new capability, it will start just being a thing you do as part of your day-to-day decision making. And that will kind of compound over time.
It's really cool.
So many things so many buzzwords, Jersey, that you've said in the last 15 minutes. I feel like this is now going to be a good episode for us to push out to people and be like, this is where you can get to. All the things, the fact that you, I'm hearing words like when you're putting variables, when you're talking about automation, this kind of stuff is super, so that language obviously sounds very generic if you're a developer, but focusing on variabilizing efforts and optimization is just like chef's kiss, is great. When you're talking about those kind of pull requests, is it, and this might be too in depth for it, but is this kind of changes to your actual EC2 sizes or things like that? Or is it kind of higher level governance elements?
Yeah. For example, we did a campaign, we call them campaigns we push out. For example, we would love for you to shut off certain environments in your ecosystem. The pull request is around the automation that actually does that action. But we think we want to turn it off at 6. Is 6 o'clock okay, good for you, or is it 7 o'clock? That's one. But yeah, we get to a place where we would like for you to downsize your EC2 instance or shift RDS Graviton. Those are things that we're starting to do more and more. But again, we don't want to force anything down on teams. We want them to make it easy for them to say, yes, I like this. Thank you for doing all that work for me. Let me just now take it the final mile and get that win.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I like this kind of helping them along the process. It's a bit of a different way of working. I think a lot of the times we hear customers just kind of preaching, where I like this element because you have that well-rounded technical team and finance team that you can actually go and make the change, which is very cool. We've got some great questions coming in, so I'll keep going. Unless, John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, the only other thing that I was going to mention was I think we clued in on something really interesting here because Steph in her previous life was a baker, and now we're hearing about
the cupcakes.
I think cupcakes may have a really important role in cloud efficiency going forward that we're just scratching the surface on right now.
That's what I was going to ask Jazzy. Do you make the cupcakes? Like, are you a baker?
We have a going joke here because I keep bringing up cupcakes in every conversation that I planted some wheat here in my backyard because homemade cupcakes are the best. But you got to start from a seed. So the wheat is growing. The cupcakes will be here in the spring. So.
Are you joking that you've planted wheat?
Of course I'm joking.
Okay. I don't know.
No,
very invested.
I also misheard what you said when you said wheat. I thought you said something else.
Yeah,
So I wanted to check.
People love to eat. Food brings people together. And if you can really kind of bring people together and then be like, hey, if you did this, it would be good for you. They'd be like, great cupcake. I'm in a great mood. I'm going to go do this thing that you're asking me to do. And then it's a win for everybody.
Well, and I think that's a big piece, right? That kind of like gives a little bit of a spotlight into just, the culture and stuff like that. And what helps motivate that change for folks is like, hey, if you can nudge someone along, and be mindful that, hey, there are technical considerations that may preclude folks from implementing a change. And it's hard to know what all of those are. But give that kind of nudge in the right direction, take some of the friction out, that helps to drive the adoption and kind of do that. And I saw another kind of question that came up here.
Wait, can I just say one more? There's one that we just need to know, just to clarify. Do you make them or do you order them? Just the people want to know.
People want to know. So I don't make them. My wife makes them.
Okay, at least they're homemade. Thank you for the question.
My daughter's at the age she's 4. She's really excited about helping and baking. So it's a frequent activity in the household that I benefit from as I consume the cupcakes.
Excellent. Okay, and go on, John. Yeah, it's better. I was going to say it's more rather than stick, it's carrot, and you could say carrot cake. I saw that joke from someone else. Okay, yes, there's a really good question. Do you think a wall of shame works to motivate people? Now, the only wall of shame I could think of was at university when we just put pictures of ourselves when we had far too many beverages on a night out. We used to have that. So, John, do you mind explaining what they might mean by wall of shame when it comes to motivation?
Yeah, and I saw somebody else in the chat put a comment up about the Hall of Fame versus the Wall of Shame, right? I think that's a good way. The carrot and the stick, two different approaches. Where sometimes folks will kind of advertise, a top offenders list we've heard it called, or like a shame back report, where it's, hey, these are kind of wasteful environments, and seeing if that helps to motivate someone to make the corrective change to get themselves off of that wall of shame. So I think we definitely heard different approaches that folks have kind of done in this space. But I'm curious, Jersey, what your thoughts are on that, if that's something that Capital One does.
Not a fan of wall of shame. That's definitely not something I would recommend. I think it's very short-sighted. At the end of the day, optimizations by definition is improving something you maybe didn't do as well before. So if you're in the business of continuously coming and telling folks you did this wrong, why in the world did you did this wrong? Now you're on the wall of shame of all the things you did wrong. Very short-sighted. Maybe you'll get an action, but very soon you're going to create a toxic culture that ultimately blocks you from what you're trying to do, which is drive a culture of ownership and efficiency, as part of just everything people do. We really, the things we do this both in incident calls, not related to costs, and is the blameless culture. Like, we want to learn, why did you do that thing? Great, maybe others did the same thing that you did. We learned from it. We now did an action to improve from it, and now we're all better. And people then are continuously seeking out like how to improve. At the end of the day, we're trying to hire the smartest folks to do their best work. No one's coming in here to do take bad actions, right? So if we just create an environment of, here are the tools, here's the information, here's what we're trying to do, and get that buy-in, and just buy it, and cupcakes, don't forget the cupcakes. You really, I think you're going to create this snowballing effect of people being like, hey, people are celebrating when I take these actions, and my team is being celebrated. So I'm going to keep focusing on how to improve in this space. And I wrote a blog recently about the snowball that turns into a snowman. Like, we're trying to build the snowman around here, that with the cupcake. Now we're mixing metaphors, but in general, we like to approach it from the positive place of learning and improvement, and I think that's the long-term strategy that will gain you results.
And we'll grab that blog from you, Jersey, if it's a public one, and I'll put it on the show notes on YouTube. No, that's really cool. I like this. The wall of shame versus wall of fame thing. We do it with customers when we engage with them. I don't know about you, John, but whenever I see them doing something well, when we track KPIs, like the first thing I focus on is like, oh, you did the thing, you made the change, like congratulations, and this is the impact. And showing maybe a numerical value and say you've made this much savings or this number has gone down is a really powerful thing. And I remember when I was doing it for my own company and I'd see the numbers go down, I was really happy. So if you kind of pass that on to other people, then yeah, it's a great exercise to do. Jumping, we had another question that I wanted to quickly come back to. I missed earlier, just very quickly. We were talking about earlier with your automation with Cloud Custodian. So, what is a typical recommendation implementation pipeline with Cloud Custodian? To new words, how much of it is automated? So, do you just take the recommendation that it does, or is it it goes through a few people? I would assume.
Yeah, so the Cloud Custodian is really, we had this focus a handful of years ago. They're still in place. There's certain rule sets that we wrote, and it's really around like things that were like table stakes. Like, if your ELB is disconnected and not being leveraged, like, let's clean those things up. So that's something we did centrally, and we executed on that. And we're trying not to leverage too much because there's a lot of power in that tool. We're shifting more towards pipelines, but again, not forcing folks into it. So an investment we're making is you push your pipeline, it checks our tool, which provides a recommendation of, you could be using a more efficient instance type. Would you like to update that as part of the deployment? So again, giving people that flexibility to make that decision. Again, it's a balancing act, because when you automate a pipeline, you don't want to introduce too many human element back and forth. So it's a balancing act. We certainly do some of the central automation, but there's a lot that we look for teams to do. And I think, one thing that I'll say, like S3 intelligent tiering, it's a great example of a cloud native solution that provides so much automation. And that for us was a big focus for us this year. John, you get a lot of kudos for helping us with that, and helping us model the savings that could come from it, because ultimately it's a cloud native thing that looks at your access patterns and puts your objects in the cheapest storage tier. That makes sense. AWS did a nice job taking away some sharp edges that people, had to account for in the past. But we took an approach of intelligent tiering is our default tier, unless that you have a special reason not to use it, and then use lifecycle policies. And it's been a great win. And so we really love cloud native solutions, because that typically makes it as easy as possible. So if there's a tidbit I would have, is check out intelligent tiering. It's definitely come a long way, and it's got a lot of intelligence, and it's got a lot of simplicity. Those things together is a winning combo.
Definitely. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. So I really wanted to ask before we finished about gamification. And I know you've already started using the cupcakes, but do you do a lot of gamification within your teams?
Gamification, not necessarily gamification, but we really are trying to shift away from thou shall save this much money this year, right, and really shift towards differentiating good spend versus bad spend, waste. Because good spend is great. It moves our business forward. So really, we've been really focusing on helping people understand what their waste is and what the efficiency opportunities they have, and setting goals around that, because that efficiency can fluctuate based on daily decisions. So thou shall save X dollars is a one-time whack-a-mole type of incentive versus, hey, we would like the organization to be at this threshold. We feel like it's reasonable. Here are all the tools to accomplish this. Here's the 20 things you can do. Let's meet this threshold. And then, it turns into the gamification. We have, the structure of organization to help people say, hey, well, you can do a little better.
Awesome. Okay,
you can do a little better. That's the new tagline, I think. I like that one a lot.
We need it on a mug. Okay, brilliant. All right, thank you so much, Leslie. This has been great. We're gonna have you back on because you've got so many more questions. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week. Halloween episode, very spooky. We're talking about EC2 capacity planning. But we'll see you then. Thanks for watching and catch you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, Jersey.
Bye, guys.